I first noticed the shift in the air when he stepped into the hallway, leaning casually against the cool metal locker, his dark hair falling over relaxed shoulders. My sister, Rose, followed me into the corridor, her eyes bright with mischief. We were on our lunch break, hurrying between a greasy sandwich shop and the conference room for a last-minute project update. The hum of office gossip trailed behind us like an unwelcome fog, but something about his arrival cleared it, drawing my gaze as if magnets had decided to defy physics. He smiled careful, practiced stand. My pulse fluttered in response. I glanced at Rose, expecting her to roll her eyes, but she simply giggled, her laughter light and free. My name is Amelia Turner, and I'm 35 years old, living in the restless pulse of downtown Chicago. Rose is 2 years younger, the kind of person who finds delight in every stolen moment, a sudden burst of sunshine, the perfect slice of pizza, the way a stranger's compliment can shift your entire day. I have been working at Halcyon Media for nearly 6 years now, tracing the arc of a dream that grew brighter and more fragile with every deadline. My days revolve around client calls and creative briefs, breaking apart complex ideas and weaving them back together under the glare of fluorescent lights. Yet, for every setback and every small triumph, I carry the conviction that I was on the right path. That conviction wavered yesterday afternoon. I first met him, Evan Brooks, a few months ago at an industry mixer in the Loop. He was charming in that effortless way, peppering jokes into conversations and leaning in just enough to imply interest. Without overstepping, we hugged goodbye that night, our hands lingering long enough for a tremor to run down my spine. He texted me the next morning an invitation to coffee, then lunch, eventually an after-work drink. Each message was casual in tone, but threaded through them was a quiet hope that pulsed, insistent. I accepted every invitation, even the ones that left me restless afterward, my mind replaying each phrase for clues I wasn't yet sure how to interpret. On our recent Friday outing, he laughed at something I said, his eyes crinkling in that way that hinted at genuine amusement. When I walked him back to the office building, he paused under the soft glow of a street lamp. His voice dropped to a murmur as he said, "We're close." It was an offhand remark, spoken without fanfare, yet the words struck me like a promise. Unspoken, my stomach tightened, I swallowed hard and managed a polite nod, but my heart pounded against my ribs like a nervous drummer. Today, watching him lean against that locker and repeat the phrase, "We're close," sent my breath scattering. This time Rose was there to witness it. I watched as his gaze flicked toward me, the warmth in his coffee-dark eyes softening. I should have laughed or smiled, anything to signal I felt the same. Instead, I stood frozen, turning the phrase over in my mind like a puzzle I couldn't solve. "We're close," he repeated quietly, folding one arm across his chest. The hallway felt suddenly narrower, the gray linoleum walls closing in. Rose's giggle shattered the tension. Not a harsh cackle, but sweet and unexpected, a delicate thing caught in a sudden updraft. She covered her mouth with one hand, her shoulders shaking gently. He said it so matter-of-factly, she whispered between breaths. "It's adorable." Evan cocked his head, brow lifting, a teasing smile tugging at his mouth. "Adorable?" He laughed softly. "I didn't think adorable was in your vocabulary." Rose released her breath in a small whoosh, her eyes sparkling as she nudged me. I felt my lips twitch, but the motion never reached my eyes. Silence reclaimed the hallway. After her laughter faded, and I realized my ears were ringing. My pulse roared in my temples. Evan's gaze shifted between us, curiosity softening into patience. He took a half step forward, closing the distance I had subconsciously increased. "Sorry if that came out weird," he murmured, voice low but steady. "I just meant that I feel like I've known you longer than I actually have." His words felt confessional, vulnerable. Yet, I couldn't meet his eyes. I turned away first, scanning my reflection in the glass of a nearby window. My brown hair was pulled into a loose bun, stray strands brushing my cheek. I tucked them behind my ear, a gesture heavier with significance than I intended. Rose's eyes followed me, expectant. She wanted me to respond with the same carefree humor she displayed. Instead, I exhaled slowly. "It's fine," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Don't worry about it. Even as I spoke, I heard the static in my tone and undercurrent of something like regret. I waved off Rose's invitation to join her for lunch, claiming I had a pressing deadline. She gave me a sympathetic look, her expression softening into something resembling concern. I offered a tight smile and headed back to my desk, each step echoing with unspoken questions. My calendar buzzed with meeting reminders, finalize presentation, deck, send follow-up email to clients, update the blog, none of it registered. All I could replay were those two simple words, "we're close," stand the way they felt like a promise I wasn't ready to accept. At my desk, I settled into my chair and stared out at the cityscape beyond the window. The streets below were a mosaic of cars and pedestrians, miniature lives unfolding in a blur of motion. I tapped my pen against the desk, its rhythmic click almost soothing. In the reflection of the glass, I saw a woman caught between caution and longing. I asked myself how I had let a casual phrase unravel me so completely. Part of me wanted to send him a text, something light, playful, that might bridge the gap I had created. But another part recoiled, unwilling to reveal the vulnerability that lingered beneath the surface. I leaned back and closed my eyes, letting the weight of the moment settle. Outside, the sky was beginning to shift from steel gray to the pale blush of afternoon sun. The soft light promised rain later, and I imagined the patter of drops against the pavement, each one a tiny punctuation in the rhythm of the city. I thought of Rose's laugh, how pure it sounded, and wondered why I couldn't mirror her ease. I told myself that maybe tomorrow I would find the courage to reply properly, to let him know that I felt the same magnetic pull he described. But for now, I remained silent, watching the city breathe beneath me, waiting for the next moment when our worlds might collide again. I returned to my desk, the fluorescent lights humming as if conspiring to keep me awake. My presentation deck lay open, slides half composed, and waiting for the final polish. But my thoughts kept drifting back to Evan's words. I stared at the blank space on my laptop screen, the cursor blinking in polite invitation. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that work was my refuge, that deadlines and numbers could never betray me the way feelings could. Yet, every time I tried to focus, his voice echoed in my mind, "We're close." My phone buzzed, jolting me out of my internal reverie. Rose had sent a selfie, her smile bright as a summer morning, cafe latte in hand. The caption read, "Your turn to make her giggle." I frowned, my heart tightening. Rose meant well, but I wasn't ready for giggles or flirtations or any kind of emotional risk. I tapped out a quick busy now, talk soon, and set the phone face down. Even so, guilt prickled behind my eyes. I knew she wanted to see me happy, and I hated that I couldn't give her the reassurance she sought. I tried to channel my energy into the deck. Bullet points appeared, then vanished as I rewrote them, juggling client priorities with brand voice. The hum of the office faded to a dull drone as I created new graphics and drafted talking points. My focus sharpened for a moment, and I felt the familiar buzz of accomplishment, but it was fleeting. By the time I reached the slide on revenue projections, my palms were clammy and my heart fluttered again. I clicked back to my chat window, hovering over his name before reining myself in. No, not yet. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting stripes across my desk. I leaned back, allowed the warmth to settle over my shoulders. There was something comforting in the city's pattern of light and shadow, a reminder that things could shift in an instant. I closed my eyes and pictured Evan's easy grin, the way his eyes lit up at my jokes, the subtle warmth in his gaze when he thought I wasn't looking. I wondered what had made him choose those words. "We're close." Was it confidence or wishful thinking? I returned to the present when my boss, Carler, stopped by with an urgent request, a last-minute rescuing of assets for a high-profile client. The timeline was brutal, end of day tomorrow, and she needed me on it. I nodded, masking the turmoil in my chest, and promised I'd prioritize it. As she walked away, I made a mental note to postpone lunch and calls until the deck was done. Work had always been my anchor, and I clung to it now more fiercely than ever. My chair creaked as I spun around to retrieve reference files from the printer. The office door clicked behind me, and I almost dropped the papers when I saw Evan standing. At the threshold, his navy suit jacket was slung over one shoulder, a subtle contrast to the casual ease he exuded. He must have come back for something he forgot. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hallway felt impossibly narrow. His eyes searched mine, and despite myself, I felt a tug in my chest. I forgot my ID badge, he explained, holding up a small plastic rectangle. His voice was soft, almost apologetic. I offered him a tight smile and handed it over, trying to keep my fingers steady. "Thanks," he said, slipping it into his pocket. He hesitated, then added, "You're working late." He tilted his head toward my desk. "Need help?" I shook my head, chest tightening. "I've got it under control," I said, more firmly than I intended. I felt the old guard rising within me, self-reliance, independence, the fear of appearing vulnerable. "Don't want to distract you." I forced another smile and turned away, grabbing the papers and retreating to my desk. Back at my station, I pretended to review the printouts, but my mind replayed every nuance of the exchange. He had offered to help, an unambiguous gesture of caring, yet I had turned him down. Why was I so afraid? I thought of Rose and her room-filling laughter, her unguarded joy at small moments. I wondered what it would take for me to let go. The office emptied as evening approached. The hum shifted to a soft murmur, colleagues packing bags and tapping out last emails. I kept working, though the numbers on my screen blurred. My heart pounded with a sense of urgency, not just about the project, but about the gap between us. I realized that every time he reached out, I retreated, building walls out of politeness and fear. I saved my files and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow was another day of meetings and deliverables, but I sensed this was a turning point. I wanted to step out of my comfort zone, to risk a little vulnerability. I thought of how the rain had started that morning, each drop a punctuation marking time. I imagined stepping into that rain and shielded, exposed Dan, feeling alive. I stood, gathered my things, and headed for the elevator. I passed Rose's desk, but she'd already left, her chair empty. I paused, glancing at the photo she pinned, both of us at the beach in Santa Monica, when whipping our hair as we laughed. I smiled softly, pressing my palm against the frame. Tomorrow, I promised myself, I would reply to Evan, maybe a text simple, genuine, something to break the pattern of silence. As I stepped onto the elevator, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I fished it out, my heart thumping. A new message from Evan. Left my wallet in the meeting room. Mind grabbing it for me, happy to return the favor sometime, no pressure. Just another casual reach across the distance. My fingers hovered over the screen. I tapped sure, then added, "I'd like that." My pulse slowed, a cautious hope blossoming. I pressed send, and the message flew into the digital void. The doors closed, and I felt a sense of possibility settle over me. The world outside was drenched in evening rain, city lights shimmering in puddles. I stepped onto the street, the air cool against my skin, and lifted my face to the sky. For the first time in days, I laughed softly, unguarded, and genuine. Maybe Rose was right, I did have adorable in my vocabulary, and tomorrow, we might be even closer. I walked into the meeting room on the second floor, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead and the faint scent of stale coffee lingering in the air. The long mahogany table was nearly empty, save for a few scattered papers and the echo of our afternoon meeting. I spotted the navy leather wallet tucked between two folders near the head of the table. Evans. As I reached for it, I felt my pulse quicken, reminding me of everything I'd left unsaid. Clutching the wallet in one hand and my umbrella in the other, I turned toward the door and nearly bumped into him. He swung the door open just enough to peek inside, his gaze landing on me immediately. "There you are," he said, voice warm. His hair was damp from the rain, droplets clinging to his collar. He stepped in, closing the door softly behind him. "Thanks for doing this." I offered the wallet with a small smile. "No problem," I said, handing it over. Our fingers brushed, that soft spark igniting again. I paused, committing his face to memory, the slight curve of his lips, the earnest concern in his eyes. the faint stubble along his jaw. He took a breath, as if deciding how much to reveal. "I owe you," he said, and for a moment I expected him to add the usual pleasantries. Instead, he looked down at the wallet in his hand, then back at me. "Truly," he continued. "And I'm glad you said yes when I asked if you grab it." His tone held something more than gratitude, something like relief. I nodded, exhaling the tension that had coiled in my shoulders all day. "I meant it," I admitted softly, happy to help. The words felt honest, unguarded, and they surprised me with how good they sounded. Evan's smile widened, genuine and bright, and I realized I had been holding my breath. He glanced at the window. Rain was streaking the glass, sending watery tendrils down the pane. "Can I make it up to you?" he asked, stepping closer so that a sliver of light fell between us. "Coffee, dinner, you pick." There was something tentative in his ask, as if he feared rejection more than I feared vulnerability. I looked back at the wallet in his hand, hesitated, then let myself be guided by impulse. "Coffee sounds good," I said, "but right now, let's just talk." Evan's forehead creased in curiosity as he set the wallet on the table and gestured toward the row of chairs along the wall. We sat side by side, close enough that our knees nearly touched. The room felt smaller, warmer somehow. Evan leaned back, rubbing the wet spot on his jacket sleeve. "I've wanted to do this all day," he confessed, voice low. "Apologize for earlier." My heart skipped. "You don't need to apologize," I said. "I was the one who..." He held up a hand. "No," I blurted, "we're close," like it meant nothing, then acted like everything was casual. "But it's not casual for me." My throat tightened as I realized how genuine he was. "It's not casual for me either," I found myself saying. I turned to face him, meeting his eyes head on. The bright office lights softened around us, and I felt the weight of every unsent text. Every moment I'd let fear build a wall between us. He reached out, tucking a damp strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was tender, deliberate. "I want to be closer," he said softly. "If you'll let me," I swallowed, remembering the ebb and flow of my own heart, the way it had leapt at his touch in the hallway, how I'd shut it down to protect myself. Now, there was no denying the truth. I placed my hand over his, warm and steady. "I'd like that," I whispered, "but I need to be honest. I've been afraid of getting hurt, of expectations." He nodded, his eyes never leaving mine. "I get that," he said. "I've been there, too. But I want to try together." We sat in silence for a moment, our foreheads almost touching, the distance between us evaporating. Outside, the rain tapped a steady rhythm on the glass, a gentle reminder that growth often follows turbulence. I closed my eyes, leaning into his presence, letting the guard I'd built around my heart slip away. When I opened them again, Evan was smiling, that same practiced grin from our first meeting, but softer, more real. "So," he said lightly. "Coffee," I laughed then, a clear, unguarded sound that felt like release. He stood and held out his arm. I took it, surprising myself with the ease that followed the way his jacket brushed against my arm, the thrum of possibility in every step we took. We left the meeting room together, stepping into the hallway, where just days before Rose had giggled at that phrase. Now, we shared a quiet understanding. No giggles, no guardrails, just two people leaning in, ready to find out what close could truly mean. As we headed toward the elevator, our shoulders brushed, and I caught my reflection in the polished metal doors, a woman with a tentative smile, eyes bright with anticipation. And I realized that this time, I was laughing back. The journey ahead might still hold uncertainty, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to welcome it.